Welcome to another edition of Rethinking Freedom. It is January 13th, 2025, and I am so excited for this year and what we're going to be doing in this space together. So whether you are watching us on our YouTube channel, Rethinking Freedom, or on the podcast platforms, or whether you are one of our regular listeners on the radio, we are so excited that you are joining us each and every week. You're engaging with this information that we're sharing, and you are actively rethinking freedom. My name is Aya Fubarinelli. I am the host of this show. Really not a show, it's a movement. The goal here is to get us to really delve into what freedom means, what we've been taught it means, how that feels in our bodies, how that's manifesting itself in the world, versus what it is that we at our core understand freedom to be, what we need it to be for everybody to thrive. And then the question is, what do we do about it to make sure that we're building the world that we want to live in? And that is work that each of us as individuals should be doing. So for those of you who engaged with our last guest, Obeng Darko, thank you so much. There have been so many comments. Go and buy his books. Get plugged in a little bit more into what he's doing and figure out what role you should be playing and how what you're learning changes what you do and how you show up. So today we have a totally, well, could I say different kind of show going on. To the extent that I'm going to be having this conversation with you today and not bringing in another guest. And I want to reference a book that I'll recommend that you all get, not just because I wrote it, but because from the work we've been doing with this book and now the hundreds that we've engaged across the world who have been participating in our 30-day guide to your self-love revolution. We started this in January of last year. This is a book that is having a profoundly positive impact on people's lives, and it is called Your Self-Love Revolution. Now, the subtitle is A 30-Day Woman's Guide to Embracing Divinity and Creating the Life You Desire. But you know what? We have had men who have engaged this material because really, we are all humans and we're all dealing with the same issues now, slightly nuanced based on different things, age, gender, maybe even your religion, race, those kind of things. But for the most part, we're all engaging the same issues, right? And so we've had men who've engaged this work, and they too have come away with a lot of insights. So today, what I want to focus on is the S word, shame. And I might get a little introspective, a little quiet with this as opposed to like really rah-rah. But I want you for a moment right now to think about a time that you felt shame. A time when you felt ashamed, a time when you were shamed. I want you to think about what that emotion felt like and how you responded to it, and perhaps how you're still dealing with and responding to this. And why would we be talking about shame on a show about rethinking freedom? Because one of the things that shame does, it's such a powerful emotion. And it's an emotion that has the ability to cause us to freeze and actually even die. It's an emotion that is so powerful that sense of feeling embarrassment or humiliation or feeling like you're not good enough. And what it does is it causes you to shrink. It causes you to hide. It causes you to isolate. It causes you to create a prison. I mean, it could be other people constructed it and then you allowed them to put you in it. Or you constructed it yourself because there are things that nobody else knows, or at least not a whole lot of people know, and you're also afraid of this truth ever coming out. You're ashamed of certain things that you've done, and so you've got to hide. Some people, of course, hide in a way that they become the loudest, the loudest voices that are anti the very thing that they've done. Because the idea is, if I make a whole lot of noise that I'm against this thing, then maybe nobody will look closely enough to see, oh, wait a second, I am guilty of the same thing. But when I think of shame, I think of the person. Can you tell me what resonates with you? I would love to get your comments on this. Someone who grew up with less than, and now you're thrust into this area. Maybe it's a school, maybe it's a workplace or whatever. And it's clear that you don't have as much as other people, and they may actually be looking down on you. I'm thinking back to my time working on a project that we were trying to do in partnership with the Flint School District in Flint, Michigan, and talking about truancy and realizing that some children weren't coming to school because they were so poor that they had no running water in their homes. And it's hard to be clean and to smell good when you don't have water, you don't have access to the basic necessities for personal hygiene. And you come to school and people are making that face and wanting not wanting to be around you and all of that. And it just makes sense not to put yourself in that place because you are ashamed. Because people are shaming you. And how we went into the school district and we're thinking about providing resources like books and how do we further advance teacher development so teachers can teach better, and then realizing, wait a second, we need to create a clothes closet. We need to have personal hygiene items that children who need them can come and access. We might need to purchase a washer and dryer for the schools so that kids can come early and put their clothes in to wash while they get something else out of the clothes closet, and then they eat a breakfast, and then they can go to school and feel somewhat normal. I'm thinking of the shame of poverty. I'm thinking of the shame of weight. You're that kid on the playground and they're choosing teams, right? And you have a leader for each team, and they're like, okay, then this person, and then this next person, and they're choosing people that they think are going to help them win. And nobody chooses you because you're that overweight child, and they're like, she can't run, he can't run, they're going to just make our team, or they're a little awkward. And so no one chooses you. And the shame you feel of everybody looking at you and saying, you're not enough. That's really what shame is about. That sense of I'm not enough. Or you're that woman who had an abortion and nobody knows about it. Or perhaps people do know about it and they're talking. And just that shame. I'm thinking about the shame of that person who has an understanding that they might not be heterosexual, that they are attracted to that thing, that person that they're told based on your gender you should not be attracted to, and that they will be seen as queer, as not quite fitting in, as weird, a weirdo. And so they're ashamed. And they try to hide and quote unquote stay in the proverbial closet while they're dying on the inside. I'm thinking of the kid, and of course this takes us into adulthood because many of the issues that we deal with as adults actually stem from our childhood, right? I'm thinking of the child who loves to read, who gets lost in books and information, and that's what just brings them alive. But other people look at you and call you a nerd, and you're uncool. And you want to fit in, and you want to be liked, and you want to be invited to the birthday parties. You don't want to hear about it on Monday and find out that you were the only person in the class who wasn't invited because all she ever does is read. And so you become the class clown, the jester. You stop reading, or at least you hide when you do it. You purposely don't excel academically because you want to fit in. Maybe you start cussing. I'm thinking of people who have been shamed into drinking, into drugs, into sex. Or you must be a prude. And you want to be liked. You want to fit in. And so you do the things. I'm thinking of the person who is ashamed to go to the family dinners because you're single. And people look around and say, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you married? Why don't you have any children? Are you not man enough? You not woman enough? I'm thinking of race. I'm thinking of people who bleach their skin. I'm thinking of people who are ashamed of their places of origin and their accents. And so they stop talking. Can I just use a popular reference? Some of you literally shamed Beyonce into not giving interviews because no matter what she did, you would come back to, well, how she talks. And in your estimation, her accent was an indication of her level of intelligence. Just using her as an example, but we do that with so many other people. But let's get back to the race part. So you're bleaching your skin. You understand the privileges of whiteness. You want to fit in. You're straightening your hair. You're contouring your nose and your facial features so that they look more Eurocentric and therefore, I guess, more acceptable and less threatening. You are literally ashamed of the body that you're in. So you cloak yourself in layers of clothes, or you go and surgically remove certain things. There are so many ways that this need to fit in, this need to conform, this need to be accepted, this very natural desire to be loved causes us to accept the judgments of people, their perceptions, and then to wrap ourselves in it. And that's the shame. I had a baby out of wedlock. I have more than one baby daddy. I have 3 divorces. Problem must be me. I must be toxic. And how shame prevents us from living as free individuals. And so today, I want to talk a little bit about shame and how we get to a point where, first of all, we stop lying about what is happening with us, because everything that is faced cannot necessarily be like made whole, but nothing can be made whole without being faced. So at least give yourself a quote unquote fighting chance. And so I would love to take, and I am going to take this time with you on air to talk about shame and to talk about how we get back to honoring ourselves. Because if we're going to rethink freedom, if we're going to live free, we really have to start within. We have to start with those thoughts, those things that we don't share, that we might actually mask, but nonetheless are operating under the surface and are keeping us in bondage. And shame is one of those emotions. So reading from this book, and this is day 9, because the way the book is set up, there are 30 days, and each day there's a different topic, a different focus. It includes a lesson. It includes a meditation. We also have a meditation channel that corresponds to every day of the book on YouTube. And we'll put the link in our YouTube description so you can easily find it. But we include a meditation, we include journal prompts because that's part of your learning process, thinking through things, thinking, sitting with it, writing, coming back, rereading, understanding yourself on a deeper level. And of course, we include affirmations because what we are going to do is to reprogram ourselves. Just like when your computer gets a virus, you've got to get that virus out and then you have to put in the operating system that you want to work, right? And so the affirmations is your way of reprogramming yourself. So going back to this book, day 9, which is the day where we deal with shame and figuring out how to honor ourselves. Shame is a powerful and pervasive emotion that often stands as a barrier to genuine self-love and acceptance. If you can't accept yourself, you can't be free. I don't care what laws are in place, you are in a self-imposed, at that point, prison. Shame is an agonizing emotion that emerges from the awareness of actions or behaviors that others or yourself may perceive as wrong or foolish. But when it really goes to a whole other level is where it's not even just actions, it's your very being is wrong. You were born in the wrong body, with the wrong skin tone, with the wrong gender. I mean, like things that you have no control over are deemed wrong and you're stamped, if you will. That goes way beyond, oh, I chose a behavior or I did something, right? We some of you may understand the shame of fighting an addiction, alcohol, drugs, food, sex, and how that again causes you to crouch in dark places and to never really feel good within yourself. And then you continue to self-medicate and it just makes the matter worse and worse, right? So what are some of the stages of shame? Let's address that. Well, first there's that triggering event. There's that first thing that happens that makes you feel, oh, I did something wrong, or people are judging me, or I'm being excluded. I am considered wrong. So taking the United States of America and really anywhere in the world. And I think it's Ibrahim Kendi that has the book. No, Ibrahim Kendi is another. No, yeah, that has the book Stamped from the Beginning. And just thinking about how some of us, by virtue of who we are, somebody else made laws and just decided, nope, we need a group that we're going to enslave, a group that we are going to other. And throughout history, there have been other groups that have been othered, but then there's a specific group where it's like, as the minute you're born, because you are born out of this body, we are automatically stamping you as inferior. The United States Constitution actually said people are 3/5 of a human being. You're not actually even a whole human being, and how that continues to reverberate. So first is the triggering event. And so some of you may need to go back and say, where did I pick this up? Where was I first told you don't fit in here because XYZ? Because you're a woman, women are too stupid to do math, or women can't drive, or you're not strong enough. You're too this or you're too that, right? What was the triggering event for you? That first time when your head just automatically went down and you started to have a different awareness of who you were. Maybe as a little girl, but you developed faster than other people. And the first time someone made a comment about your body and you decided, I've got to cover up. Something's wrong with me. So first stage is the triggering event. Then it's the internalization. Because what can trigger one person to feel shame may not trigger another person who received that same treatment to feel shame. Just depending on where you are, what's going on, whatever else has happened in your environment, how you've grown up, how you think of yourself, right? But there's that internalization. So you hear people talk about imposter syndrome. You've internalized certain information that makes you feel, yeah, maybe they're right. Maybe I don't belong. Sesame Street, one of these things does not belong. One of these things is not quite like the other. One of these things is not what we esteem. It's not what we're looking for. And you got that awareness, and then you internalized it. And then you said, okay, what must I do to be accepted, to fit in? Oh, I need to change how I speak. I actually did that. Born here in the United States, went back to Nigeria when I was a little over 3 years. I was still 3 years old, and just between age 3 and 4. You tend to take on the accents of wherever it is that you live, right? So when people say, oh, you have an accent, I'm like, you do too. Your accent may be what you're used to, so it's the norm for you. It's the standard for you, but you have an accent as well. And so anyway, coming back to the United States of America and going to Ohio State University, and I always read. I feel like I've always had a great mind. And I'm talking, and people would look at me like I'm stupid. What did you say? And I said dormitory. What the hell is a dormitory? And I'll spell it out. Oh, and then they'll laugh at me. You mean dormitory? What the hell is a dormitory? Same word, spelled differently, pronounced differently based on where you are, and so on and so forth, right? But you're going to make me want to feel stupid because I say it differently than you do. Funniest thing, I'm preaching in church, and I said, please go to Deuteronomy, and, I give the chapter and the verse. I recognize that people are looking at me like, what book in the Bible is that? And then my family's sitting on the front row to my left, and I notice all my children just do this. And if you can't see me, what I did is they just dropped their heads into their hands. And I'm like, oh, wait a second. I need a switch. How do Americans say Deuteronomy? They say Deuteronomy. But internalization, that place where you have the triggering event, and then how did you internalize it? So I could internalize the fact that I pronounce certain words differently as I'm stupid. I'm not as smart. I don't deserve to be in certain places. I'm embarrassing myself and my children who were born here and who speak more, quote unquote, American. Or I can say, you know what? You all are just not as well traveled. No shade. I can actually say it multiple ways. This is not an issue of my intelligence. But if I internalize it and say something is wrong with me, something that needs to be fixed, then now that's something that's playing in the background. And I will tell you this. I'm dating myself here. I went to the library and I checked out motivational cassettes, because that was the time, right? Zig Ziggler, Brian Tracy, people like that. And I would play these tapes over and over again in my car, on my Walkman, all of that stuff. I'm walking, I'm taking a run, I'm listening to these people. Initially, I was listening not for the content. I was listening to get a better understanding of how Americans pronounce words so that I could pronounce them differently. The joke was on me, because if you've ever heard Zig Ziggler, you know Zig Ziggler has one of the, what would be considered really deep Southern accents, right? But I'm saying all of this to say, there was somewhat of an internalization, not necessarily of shame, but of me realizing, if I want to practice law and I want the jury to be able to understand what the heck I said so that they don't just automatically rule against my client, I might want to learn how to modify my speech so I can be effective. So internalization. So at what point did you internalize that triggering event and it made you feel I'm less than? I need to straighten my hair. I need to hide the fact that I think this way, or I really believe this way, or that my parents are Indian and we eat traditional food, or that I'm fluent in Spanish or fluent in any other language, or that I practice a different religion than the one that is widely accepted in this place. I have to, take my hijab off or whatever because I need to fit in so that these people will not exclude me and I can have the life that I dream of. So when did you internalize it? And then the next phase, the next stage is then isolation. This is where, depending on how people have excluded you, you just kind of withdraw into yourself. So you may be that quote unquote fat kid who then doesn't go out that much. And, or that, whatever it is that is causing you shame, you retreat. Or you find people who are like you and you guys form your own little posse and you're like the outcasts, right? But you're no longer your vibrant self. You're no longer just showing up as your full self and saying, I deserve to be at all these spaces. You're shrinking, you're shrinking, you're shrinking. You almost want to be invisible because maybe if people don't notice you, they won't pick on you. They won't other you. And then in this place of isolation, we get into the negative talk, the negative self-talk. You're constantly tearing yourself down. Some of us get to a place where, or some of you, where it's not just your internal critic anymore. You become that jester who always uses self-deprecating humor. You're going to be the one that I'm going to tell the fat jokes of myself first before you can tell it. I'm going to stab and cut myself first before you cut me and cause me to bleed out. Because if I cause myself to bleed out and people are laughing at me, I don't know, maybe I can convince myself they're laughing with me. I'm going to go ahead and inflict the pain on myself first. So you'll be the first one to crack jokes about whatever it is that you're feeling ashamed about. Because you're hoping to take the sting out of someone else pointing it out. Hey, I'm aware. And so I'm going to put myself down first. And for some of you who are listening who are right now, no, that's not my problem. You're lying. We've all felt shame at some point. And of course, if you've done the work to address it and then to make sure it's not negatively impacting you and to get to a place where you're honoring yourself, kudos. And please put in the comments on our YouTube channel what you did to get yourself to this place where you can honor yourself regardless. People who were sexually molested as children and you feel that shame. You didn't do it. Someone did that to you. Someone violated you. A person who was raped. And what happens in that place of isolation and with that negative talk where you're beating yourself down is you don't get the help you need. You are taking on that you deserved whatever happened to you, or this is just your cross to bear. And this thing is eating you up on the inside, but because you're isolating, you are not getting the help that you need. And then it starts to, that pain that you're in starts to show up in other ways that can be very harmful to you. Maybe you become this people pleaser. Maybe you become this person who has no boundaries whatsoever. Everybody comes in, does whatever, and walks out because you have no self-respect anymore. Pausing just for that to sink in a little bit. Then the next stage is avoidance. We might just go into total denial here. We avoid situations or people that remind us of this triggering event. We don't go get help. We just, so we just remove ourselves from it. And so you might get ultra religious, or, you're looking for this thing outside of yourself to validate you without ever addressing the thing itself. But all the while, lurking in the back of your mind is, they're going to find out. They're going to find out. What happens when they find out? What happens when they find out? What happens when they find out? And it actually prevents us from being able to form real relationships, from ever being able to truly be intimate with people, because you have all of these things about you that people judge to be wrong. You've internalized that it is wrong. And now you've got to play this role like you don't have those things, but you know that you do. And so That's that shame. And then that avoidance. And so even in close relationships, you can't be your full self. You can't really say, this is who I am. Some of you are in marriages, intimate relationships. Your partners don't know the half about you. So there are things you might do with your intimate partner, that person that publicly people know you're with. And then there are other things that you do with other people that your partner doesn't even know, oh, they have that interest. Or you're sneaking, you hide to eat. Or you're hiding to do your drugs. Or, whatever it might be. We're a movement, rethinking freedom here. How are you going to set yourself free if you don't figure out what is keeping you bound and if you don't effectively address it? And that avoidance leads to that chronic shame. What happens with chronic shame? You can actually have physical ailments, ulcers, high blood pressure, all of this. It's like this thing that is eating you up on the inside. You're literally feeling like you're living a lie. Or you're trying so hard to cover up something, but at the same time feeling like, I know they can see it. I know they can see it. Might lead to depression, anxiety. It might lead to you abusing your body in different ways. Cutting just to connect with yourself, just to relieve the pressure. And then you have to hide where you cut because now you're also ashamed of the fact that you cut. And that's not to say, for those of you who are going to say, oh, well, there are positive aspects to shame. Yeah, to the extent that if you, that knowing that you can be shamed can cause people to conform so that a society comes together better. But can we do that without the shaming part, though? It's great to have norms like, yeah, no, you should be ashamed of yourself if you go stealing. So we do need to make those kind of distinctions. But we don't want to get people into a place where they are then too ashamed to get the help, the support they need. We also don't want to shame people to make ourselves feel better about who we are. So if I can find a reason to put you down, then that makes me feel like I'm more. So chronic shame, very problematic. And if you are listening to this, kind of gauge. And you may need to unpack this with a therapist or a counselor or a life coach, someone who knows what they're doing, not just because they put some letters behind their names. Because when you reach out for help, then you can get to that place of acceptance and healing. Remember, you got to face a thing to be able to solve a thing. I'm thinking of the lessons I learned when I was a kid about, if you get a snake bite, what? You're supposed to, first of all, tie a tourniquet to prevent it, like, from very easily flowing to other areas. They tell you to quickly cut where you got that bite, and your goal is to try and suck out, squeeze out, whatever, that venom. I know that's old school. That's for people who couldn't immediately get to a hospital, and then you get to go to the hospital, or you're doing it while you're on the pathway to a hospital, if there's a hospital near you. But, we had to figure out these things. And so, when I think of getting to the next part of the stages of shame, which is where I hope everybody would try to get to, which is acceptance and healing, it does require you to get to a place where you're like, I'm ready to look at this for what it is, and I'm ready to go through the pain to get it out. And to do that, you're going to have to expose it. Whether you're able to unpack that on your own, which most of us are not, or whether you have a loved one who holds space for you and gives you that freedom, that creates a space where you know you're loved unconditionally, where you can just speak your truth, or whether you go work, like I said, with a therapist, a psychologist, whatever, to help you unpack these things, to trace back the root of it, to understand how it's impacting you and playing out in your life and how it's preventing you from living the life that you want to live. And then who can help you figure out healthier ways to heal. But there's, again, no healing without addressing exactly where you are with it. So recognizing these various stages of shame is essential to get to a place where you are loving yourself. And I really, truly believe that without getting to a place of self-acceptance and self-love, you cannot be free. You have to love, accept yourself, build up confidence in yourself to get to a point where you're saying, now let's reimagine the world. And how do I show up in my freedom and then create spaces for other people to show up in their freedom as well? How do I create spaces where we just embrace our common humanity, where we honor our environment, where we understand that we're all intricately connected and what happens to one happens to the other, and I can't be free if someone else is in bondage? But it's got to start with self. Rethinking your own freedom. How many of you put up, as they would say, fronts with family members? They think they know, but they don't really know. And you are afraid to be yourself with them for, again, fear of being judged, fear of being ostracized. But I'm telling you, if you're feeling that fear, there are other people in the family who are feeling that same way too. And collectively, you're all in some kind of bondage. How do you unpack that? Shame in its many forms often creeps into our lives silently, like a shadow that darkens the corners of our hearts. It can stem from past mistakes. I had a baby as a teenager out of wedlock. I forever feel shame about that. You remember how they used to do it in certain cultures, not all. But certainly this Western culture, especially as you started to climb up the social hierarchy. A young girl gets pregnant and you send her away. She goes and lives with relatives somewhere else, has the baby, comes back. Someone else in the family raises the baby like it's their own. People are full-grown adults before they find out that the person they thought was their sister is actually their mother. Shame of, I don't know who my father is. And that weighs on me as though you did anything. It lingers, the shame, it lingers, it clings to our souls. It impacts how we perceive ourselves, how we perceive our worth, what we allow into our lives. And then you might then become part of the shame brigade because the same pain that you are feeling, you then want to inflict on other people. That's what happens with hazing, with these different organizations. You got hazed, it felt horrible, but now when you're in the position to bring in the next crew, you want to haze them as well. You want them to suffer what you suffered and maybe more. But you didn't like it when you went through it. But now you've convinced yourself that's what makes you all bond. Crazy madness. And I can say that because I haven't joined any of those kind of organizations because I probably wouldn't make it past the initiation phase. I'm going to tell somebody, you're not about to abuse me. Been there, done that, and I'm not going to sign up and pay for it. It's important to me as we talk about shame and getting to the part of honoring ourselves, that we also understand that in addition to how it affects us physically, in addition to how it affects how we show up in the world, what we think is we're capable of, what doors we choose to open or walk through or create for ourselves, it's also how it impedes us spiritually. When you feel shame and you feel unworthy, there's even a disconnect from your creator, from God. Now, if I were to go, and I understand, we're all in different places in terms of how we read the Bible or where we see it. it's not a history book for me. I think like a lot of other things that are written there, lessons you can glean from it that can absolutely help you in your spiritual walk. And so I'm going to use a couple of stories from the Bible. Let's use the one about the tax collector, Zacchaeus, because when I was a kid, we sang a song about Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was a short man was he. I'm not a singer. But anyway, but the whole idea was Jesus wasn't supposed to be interacting with those money changers and those tax collectors. Something was wrong with Jesus. People were trying to shame him, right? The woman with the issue of blood who was ashamed because of this situation that she had, this illness. So it could be a disability that you have that is causing you to feel shame. It could be some disease ailment that you're fighting and people don't understand, and so they're reacting to you in a certain way. Right now we have, we're at a place in our world where we're understanding that there's an autism spectrum and that there are people who are different levels of the of that spectrum, and you could be someone who is highly functional and people can initially tell you're on that spectrum. And so you are ashamed to just be who you are, because what if they find out? Will they now think that certain doors should be closed to me? But when we come to the spiritual aspect of it, and the reason why I was going back to the Bible is you see how people who were supposed to feel ashamed in the Bible, people who were being shamed, were basically being told, don't come around the one that eventually would be called the Messiah, right? Don't be around people. We shame, we isolate them. Let's talk about the 10 lepers. And I could go on with so many other examples out of the Bible itself. But the idea, or let's go back to quote unquote Adam and Eve. And the minute that they got an awareness, I wasn't supposed to eat this, now I've eaten it, now it's opened up my eyes, and I look down, oh, I have no clothes on, now I have this awareness, now I internalize it, now I'm ashamed, now I'm looking for leaves and banana fronds or whatever to cover up my body, and they hide from God, if you want to take that literally. So shame also impacts our spiritual walk. Your ability to connect to your creator, to connect to the universe, to connect to who you are as a spiritual being. And we are all spiritual beings having a physical existence. And then once you have that disconnect, you are in constant turmoil. There is no peace within you. And then you're out in the world raging against everybody. I am convinced that these people who have to put other people down and create wars and belittle folk and create laws to make themselves feel better are people who are spiritually disconnected. Because if you were connected to the creator who created all things, you will not think it's okay to just kill other people. You will not think it's okay that you have so much and there are people starving and you keep building structures to maintain that inequality. You would not think it's okay to police other people's bodies and abilities. You would not think it's okay to spend more money on guns and weapons than on meeting the physical and social needs of human beings. I think that's a spiritual disconnect. I think something happened to those people as children and it rewired their brains, and in order to fight that shame and to feel better than, they have to seek power for the purpose of subjugating other people. If you felt good about yourself, why do you need to put other people down? If you feel you're so smart, why do you want to create laws to prevent people from having access to education that allows them to compete? To just be, forget competition, to just be. We don't have to compete. We can all bring what we have and make the world a better place. So as we rethink freedom, I'm telling you that there are so many people at these higher levels, quote unquote, higher levels, who are making decisions that are wrecking the world because they are on the inside ashamed. They feel less than. And they're masking it with this madness. And the rest of us are bearing the brunt of it. So to get to the part where you honor yourself, you have to first identify what it is. And then decide that you are ready to release the grip of shame and replace it with self-love. I think it's Oprah Winfrey who said, we're only sick, we are sick as our secrets. If I come out and I say, this is my experience, I own it, I learned from it, I'm moving forward, I no longer have to feel ashamed of you outing me. And in that place of boldness, of owning whatever it is that I've done, I actually give other people permission to speak up as well. We might find out we're in the majority. And those of you trying to shame us, you lying to yourselves too. When I think about the whole skin color, race, race is a social construct. Yeah, but it does, but it's a social construct. But around it, they've also constructed some some things that are causing hell in people's lives. So don't just ask me to dismiss it. You all play this race card to begin with. And when I bring it up and say you are actually disenfranchising people based on race, don't now tell me I play the race card. No, you created this. But when we are feeling shame about who we are because of labels other people have put on us, and then we're internalizing it, and now we're calling ourselves that. I'm listening to some of this music now, and women are calling themselves the B word, it seems now, that just as much or more than men have called us. I'm like, what is that about? Oh, it's self-empower, it's woman empowerment. Really? It is? Or the N-word. Language matters. And when you are internalizing and calling yourself these things, you actually start to take on, this is who I am, and there's a culture that comes with that. You're actually becoming the thing that those people have said you are. You are allowing them to remake you in their image. So self-love, releasing this shame, standing up. For me, I am a woman of African descent. And like Maya Angelou, I'm a phenomenal woman. I'm a phenomenal human being. And if you have any issues with any part of who I am, that is your issue. That is you not feeling up to. And I don't know why you feel that way. Because the fact that I walk in my power and confidence should not make you feel less confident about yourself. I can celebrate me and acknowledge that you are worth celebrating as well. So when I refuse to take on your cloak of shame, your shame that you want to put on me, and then it's like, oh, who does she think she is? Oh, sit down, pull up a seat, I'll tell you. Phenomenal. So if you're someone who, as you're listening to this, you're saying, yep, been there, or I have loved ones who are in this space, or I've been someone who has been shaming people, wherever you are on the spectrum, there's work for us to do. Reach out for help. And if you can't get it, and even if you can get some support from people around you, you might want to go to a professional who can really work with you and give you the tools to unpack where this shame came from, help you see how it's impacting you, give you some of the tools and strategies to reaffirm and build yourself up from the inside out. And then as you heal, you create space for other people as well. This requires also engaging in what we now popularly call self-care practices. In this book, Your Self-Love Revolution, we cover the 7 to Thrive. The acronym, acrostic, whichever term you want to use, is JASPER. And we tell people, do these 7 things every day and watch how you transform your life. The J is for journaling, taking time to write what you're grateful for every day. You can do it at the beginning of the day so it sets you up for life. Like, I'm excited. I woke up. My fingers work. My feet work. My heart is still beating. I don't have a stomach problem. My stomach isn't upset. My head isn't pounding. You just start with some of those basic things, and you just build yourself up in terms of just being grateful for what is. It changes how you move. It changes how you feel. It changes how you respond to even the madness that you might then encounter as you go through your day. So the J is for journaling. The A is for setting affirmations. And just 5 minutes. I'm absolutely awesome, if you want to use that, right? Say it until you mean it. It's like working a muscle. You first start and your muscle's like, oh my God, this hurts. But the more you say it, the more you do it, the stronger that muscle becomes. And the next thing you go to pick up that weight and the muscle is like, that's it? That's all we're lifting? So say your affirmations, just 5 minutes a day. And in this book, we have over 300 affirmations. And there's all kinds of information out there. You can actually just Google on your device and ask for affirmations, and there are a whole set of them. And then it can inspire you to write your own. In what areas do you need to affirm yourself? Affirm yourself daily. Listen, we do this. We do this with our loved ones. We do it with little kids. You ever seen a child, an infant, infant, starting to crawl? You're like, oh, go, 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 go. And it's literally this person on all fours, right? Or when they start trying to get up on their little legs and we're like, oh, and we want to capture it, and then we're posting it on social media and you're sending videos. They took their first walk. We're affirming them. We all love to be cheered on, right? So affirm yourself. Be your own cheerleader. So that's the J, that's the A. Journaling, affirmation. Sleep is the S. The S is for sleep. Sleep at least 6 to 8 hours a day. Hey, I come from a long line of hard workers. My grandparents were extremely hardworking on both sides of the family. Both my parents, very hardworking. My mother's 80, still working. And my father is 86, still working, teaching PhD candidates. So I come from a long line of people who think sleep is overrated. And I used to pride myself on, 4 hours and that's all we need, and we keep moving. And now I'm at a place where, no, my body needs rest. My body, that's the time for my body to heal itself and rejuvenate. That's a time for my subconscious to go to work for me on my goals. So 6 to 8 hours, that's the S. 6 to 8 hours, 6 to 8 hours of sleep daily. And if you can get more, my body doesn't like more than that. It's like, nah, then I get lethargic. So figure out what works for you. The P is pray and meditate. And so we have a whole meditation channel, like I told you, that goes along with this book. And every day you can just click on it and we'll walk you through a meditation. But it's grounding, getting back to self, recentering, building up your spiritual being, praying, right? That's the P. The H is hydrate. Our bodies are like 70% water? Drink water, not coffee, not caffeinated drinks, not juice, not alcohol. Drink water, at least 64 ounces a day. Keep yourself healthy. Keep yourself hydrated. If you get to a point where you're like, I'm thirsty, you're already dehydrated. Your body actually needs that water to function effectively. And we know what happens if you don't drink water for 3 days. You're gonna die, right? Organs literally start to shut down. So that's the J, the A, the S, the P, the H. The E is for exercise. Exercise at least 20 minutes a day. Take the stairs. Park your car further from the door. Take those extra steps. Use your body weight. You don't have to have a gym membership. Clean your house, garden, dance, but exercise 20 minutes a day. Get that heart rate up. And the R is for read something inspirational for at least 15 minutes a day. The world comes at us with so much negativity. What you want to do is be intentional about feeding your mind. And I'm not saying just read anything. Reading is great. You pick up, vocabulary and so on and so forth. You learn about other places. But I'm saying be intentional about reading things that inspire you, that are positive, that build you up. Because as a human being thinketh, so they are. And so whatever you're taking in through your ears, through your eyes, that stuff is working on the inside of you. So you want to make sure that you are intentionally putting in good things, because it's out of that greater, better things are going to emerge. And so that's the Jasper. So we definitely want to hear from you. Again, if you're watching this on the radio, thank you so much for all our listeners and for sharing the word. We've been blown away by the reception of Rethinking Freedom. And for those of you who are, catch us on our podcast, thank you again. And thank you for spreading the word. And for those of you on our YouTube channel, we are so grateful. We love your comments. We respond to just about everything, except for the ones we delete where people are just being rude, because why? We're rethinking freedom. We're not doing negativity in that way in this space. And so I would love to hear from you about this notion of shame, what impact you think it's had, and the pathway to honoring yourself, to being able to walk into a room and stand in your truth, in your power, unapologetically. But more importantly, to be able to stay in the quiet, dark places and to know that you have value, that you matter, that you don't have to prove yourself to anybody, and that you honor yourself. You treat yourself with love and respect. You recognize your own intrinsic value and worth. Because once you recognize that, you're not so quick to accept people trying to make you less than. It allows you to then show up and ensure your freedom in other spaces. And so I'm going to end with this. I do believe that when we look at any group that has been marginalized or subjugated or disenfranchised, a huge part of that is first shaming people, that group, and getting a significant number of them to buy into that notion of them being less than. When women across the world continue to support systems that disenfranchise them, that treat them as less than, that is because those women have bought into the notion that they really are less than, that they really don't deserve anything better. Otherwise, we would show up differently and demand our freedom and ensure our freedom in a different way. I believe that that is true for people who are suffering under the weight of poverty. So many people living day to day and being crushed by that weight don't look up enough to say, hey, how do we come together and overthrow this system that is oppressing us? They actually feed into it and feel like, if I can be the one that climbs out into the middle class, if I can be the one from the middle class that climbs out into the millionaire class. And so you keep supporting the very systems that are killing you. I would definitely say for people of African descent, we can talk about other groups as well. I'm going to center that because that's who I am. A lot of what is happening in countries in Africa and in the diaspora to people of African descent is because we have internalized a narrative that we should be ashamed of who we are and who we've been and what our contributions have been to the world. And because we have now bought into that narrative, we allow people to continue to limit our freedom. So let's rethink freedom. Let's start by taking off that cloak of shame. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we look forward to seeing you next week.